Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this July 18th, 2017 meeting of the Sustainability Commission of the City of Palm Springs. We are delighted that you are here, and as Commissioner Futterman arrives, we are at a full house of commissioners for tonight. So I'd like to ask Jay Verrata if he would lead us in the flag salute.
Absolutely. Would everyone please rise? Thank you. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
Dan, if you would do the roll call, please.
Chair Jackson.
Present.
Vice Chair Wilson.
Present.
Commissioner Clark.
Present.
Commissioner Futterman.
Present.
Commissioner Goins.
Present.
Commissioner Wengler.
Present.
Commissioner Friedman.
Present.
Commissioner Gauthier.
Present.
Commissioner McCann.
Present.
All present.
Great. The agenda was posted per city regulations, and I'm not aware of any adjustments, but is there a motion to accept the agenda as presented?
So moved.
So moved by Commissioner Vice Chair Wilson. Second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Futterman. All in favor say yes.
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 Opposed say no. Abstain. And the agenda is accepted. We have Assistant City Manager Marcus Fuller here. Welcome, Marcus. Anything you have for us this afternoon?
I do. Thank you, Commissioners. I wanted to talk briefly about tomorrow night's council meeting and the item that I'll be presenting regarding leaf blowers. I take it you might have read the staff report that I put together, which is a follow-up on the February staff report that I prepared. And based on council's direction, we've given them two options, as you might have read in the report, for them to consider your recommendation on a ban of all gasoline leaf blowers versus a ban on all leaf blowers. We did note in the staff report that AQMD's lawnmower exchange program has been released. Pre-registration is underway. Again, that exchange is only available to commercial landscapers. It's not available to the general public. And there's only one dealer in the Coachella Valley, which is Yoshi dealership. Did I say lawnmower?
You did.
I did. Leaf blowers.
Yeah.
Where did I come up with that? It's been a long day. Leaf blowers. Sorry. Leaf blowers. Yoshi is the dealer here, and we've identified in the staff report the flyer that shows the 5 models that are available for exchange, and it actually includes one gasoline leaf blower that AQMD has identified, which I guess has lower emissions than some of the newer gasoline leaf blowers. I guess I would be interested in your comments on whether a leaf blower ban allowing for that one gasoline type model or a model approved by AQMD would be something this commission would support or not. That issue might come up tomorrow night because of the fact that AQMD this year has included a gasoline leaf blower in its exchange program. We will also have a nice demonstration project tomorrow night with an array of various leaf blowers, which we will ensure are stored inside so that the batteries don't get affected by the heat, and we can demonstrate them at their full capacity so we can just get an appreciation of the noise that's generated by both the gasoline and the electric leaf blowers. So I just wanted to make sure that you and the public were aware of tomorrow's discussion planned at the council meeting, and I am interested in your thoughts as far as the AQMD gasoline leaf blower that's part of their exchange program. Thank you, Chair.
I do know that Commissioner Clark and I plan to be present tomorrow night, and we'll just speak briefly in public comment. So, Commissioners, do you have a response to Marcus Fuller's question about the AQMD's one approved gas-powered blower?
I do.
Okay, Commissioner Clark.
When our subcommittee met last October, a couple of days after the public hearing, we considered that some of the newer gas-powered leaf blowers were quieter and did pollute less than they had been years before. I think there was a period in the early 2000s when there were regulations that phased in lower emission levels for gas-powered blowers. But I recall that we were quite consistent at that point saying, no, we don't want to deal with, or we don't want to recommend gas-powered blowers at all because of the emissions from the motors. And that's why we were really behind the electric blowers at that time. That was Jennifer, Joe, and I. And we were strong on that point.
Okay. Other commissioners?
I have a question.
Sure. Vice Chair Watson.
Do you know why it is that this one particular model is acceptable to the Air Quality Management District?
You know, I don't. Honestly, I don't know why they allowed it this year. It's a good question.
Well, last year they had several gas-powered blowers available in the exchange program. And apparently now they've just narrowed it down to one.
Okay.
Well, that'd be an interesting question to try to get answered. And of course, you know, council will do what council will do. Anyway, yeah. Other commissioners?
Chair Jackson.
Sorry.
I do note from the staff report that the leaf, the gas-powered is one of the noisier ones. It was at 65, so I know one of the objectives is noise reduction, and I realize from reading the staff report that even the electric ones may require an exception, but that was on the upper level. So we're talking about perhaps exceptions to exceptions, but I would certainly join with the subcommittee saying is that I think that there's a message. It goes with some of the other things with CCA and solar, whatever, that we prefer electric to carbon-based.
And I just wanted to make one point about the noise. I think there was a part of the staff report that said that none of the leaf blowers would meet the noise requirements all of the time. But part of what we've been recommending, and I know Jeff Kors is strongly behind, is training. And the blowers wouldn't be operated at full speed all of the time. And I think training is a real big part of this, this effort to get the users to not rev them and use them at lower speeds where they're quieter and learn how to do their job better by following procedures that will be developed as part of training.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Anything else, Marcus?
No, that was it. Thank
Okay.
you, Chair.
All right. In our commission liaison report section, Planning Commissioner Middleton notified me that she would not be able to be present tonight, but Commissioner Friedman will certainly cover those issues in item G2, so we're fine there. So we are at public comment, time set aside for the public to address the commission on issues that are a part of our general responsibility. If there's anyone who wishes to come forward and speak, now is the time. And there's a standing microphone there, and speakers have 3 minutes, and we appreciate your name and your city as you speak.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Stone. I've been a 12-year resident of Palm Springs, and I'm running for City Council in November. I wanted to come and talk today about solar energy a little bit. Hopefully everything you know about it is more than I know, but in case you don't know these things, I want to talk about them. I have solar on my house. I'm going to have solar on the house I'm moving into next week, actually. One of the things that California is doing really well is handling renewable energy resources. And we're doing so well that we actually are generating so much power that we can't always sell it. And just in the last year, there have been several times in which the state of California has actually had to pay the state of Arizona to take our excess power. And the problem is there's only a limited amount of storage capacity for the renewables and resource power that we're generating, and when that capacity gets overloaded, there's no place to send it, and then it starts messing up the service delivery system. And that's a significant problem that will only get bigger as time goes on. It's also a problem that Oahu has had to address because they're an island, and they are one of the sunniest places in the world, as are we, and they have stopped issuing new solar permits to people who are on the grid because they don't have an Arizona that they can send their excess power to. And the reason we had to pay Arizona is normally California sells it on the market, but it's a supply and demand market, and in those months in which the demand went below zero, then we had to pay Arizona to take our power. So there is a solution to this, and this is the solution that Oahu has put into place, and that is new people who want to convert to solar in Oahu are now required to buy one of the whole house batteries that Elon Musk at Tesla has been pioneering. And if they buy the whole house battery, they can put on their solar panels, they can store all of their own solar energy and go completely off the grid. And so I appreciate the fact that we are now moving forward to a position where we're going to be requiring solar on new installations and new homes and on substantial remodels and additions. But I just want us to have a larger vision. This is one of the reasons I'm running for city council. I want us to be looking at the much bigger picture and see what we can do better. How can we look at where we're going to be in 5 years or in 10 years? And in a perfect world, I would be going to Elon Musk and I would be saying, we're here in one of the sunniest places in the world. We have an international reputation. People come here from everywhere. How about partnering with our city and making Palm Springs an all-solar city? Imagine the publicity value of the slogan, Palm Springs, powered by Tesla. It would be an amazing coup if we could arrange something like that. This is the kind of proposal that I think we need to be entertaining. We need to be thinking bigger, and I hope you knew all of that, but if you didn't, you know now. So I'm going to pass out some of my cards. It has my personal contact information and my website, and you'll know how to get in touch with me. And thank you, by the way. I was a city commissioner for 3 years, and people never say thank you to you guys, so I'm saying thank you now.
Thank you. Are there others who wish to speak in public comment? I see no one moving to the microphone, so I will declare public comment closed. And we are at item A, welcome and introductions. I don't think we have anybody we need to introduce tonight. So we are at item B, Christine Hammond, report from Measure J. It says tentative. Christine Hammond is never tentative about anything. She is forthright and on the money, and we are glad to have you come and tell us what's going on with Measure J. Sure, that'd be great.
I actually am tentative, especially with this sort of thing. I'm Christine Hammond. I was fortunate enough to be selected as one of the original commissioners for the Measure J Commission in 2013, I believe, and have worked with this group for the last 5 years. I'm moving into my last year now. And I'm just going to give you an update on where we're at, where we've been and where we're at. And if you don't want to hear it where we were, where we started, just let me know. But there's a process that we went through that I think is telling about people who are learning on the job, maybe, with something new that we've never done before. So I'll just say that Measure J has, in the June meeting, we have just made a decision about how to move forward with our third community project, what we're calling community project. And we have learned a lot since our initial projects in 2013-14. And in 2013-14, we developed an application. It was probably 15 pages long. I've totally blocked it out of my mind at this point. It was so horrendous because you have to read all of that once you put the application out and they come back in. We got over 300 applications from anybody in the community, businesses, residents, visitors, anybody who had an idea submitted a 15-page application, or 300 of those people who had ideas. And we selected about 100 of those, and those 100 went into the city coffers to get started on production. I know that the shade structure at Mizell was one of those projects that was just completed within the last 6 months, and I believe that there are other projects that have not yet been completed because of the kind of preparation that the city had to go through in order to go out to bid, select a contractor to do the projects, and get the project started. You have probably experienced with the work that you do that it takes a while to get a project from concept to a shovel in the ground. And we learned that, we learned it. And I think the city learned it as well. It was sort of an overwhelming role, you know, oh my God, what have we done kind of, what have we created here kind of process. So we did get do some really, really good projects during those first couple of years, including the iHub. We helped fund the iHub. We helped fund, Measure J helped fund the Architectural and Design Museum. We helped to fund the remodel at the high school auditorium, the Wellwood Murray Library, and then, of course, all along, we have been funding paying the bonds for the downtown, the new downtown and the parking. So the maintenance for that. So really doing what I think are some very good projects for the city, the residents, and our visitors. But we learned there that the city doesn't necessarily have all the staffing to do all the work required to get ready to do a project like that. So our next project, which was 2014, we decided that we would theme the projects. And at that point in time, we were willing to accept suggestions for themes. None came forward. We had one suggestion, and that was hot spots. And this was a pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicle safety program for the city. Take a look at where the hot spots were in the city and see how many of them we could fix. We were very fortunate to have had, the timing was right, the planets aligned, and City Council said, we'll fund this project for 3 years. We are now in our 3rd year of this project, and which is focused, this year is focused on sidewalk infill, walkability based on what sustainability was working on several years ago and probably is still working on. And our second is crosswalks. So the city will be doing several crosswalks in key areas around town to improve pedestrian safety. So I will say that the sidewalks were not without their curious aspects. And in this particular project, again, when we went out for input from the community, anybody could provide input on anything. And so as it ended up, and David is my example here, as it ended up, we had people from other neighborhoods make suggestions for a neighborhood or another neighborhood. So the neighbors hadn't been asking for some of these things like sidewalks, but other neighborhoods said, oh, that neighborhood really needs sidewalks. Well, another major lesson that we learned about just putting all of this out. But we've had great projects. We've had a number of traffic signals that we have been warranted and will be going in. It takes a long time to get a traffic signal installed, so I'm hoping within the next year or so we'll see some of these start to happen. And we've added we're adding sidewalks. We've added a lot of bike paths with road diets on the streets, which is another project. We got more bike paths because we partnered with the city and did more road diets. So it was fairly creative, and I think it was a very good result. So so that was a great project. And so this next year we'll finish up the 2014 project on sidewalks and crosswalks, and then we will start our third community project, which is we had two themes come up for this. One being Hot Spots 2.0, or hotter spots, and the second is improvements to a number of our parks. So the parks, as I said earlier, what we learned when these projects came up was there's a lot of design work involved there. Like with sidewalks, engineering at the city spent a good year designing these infill projects. So that's the beauty of a multi-year project. But it will, I'm sure parks will be working very closely with the city to design some of the applications that they're most interested in, including a number of safety-related situations that they have in parks that they want improvement on. The hotter spots, or Hot Spots 2.0, I think we found a very creative resolution to identifying projects for that. And that was to bring the police department and engineering together. And the crime analyst at Palm Springs Police took a look at 3 years of accident data related to bicycles and pedestrians. And this was actually, this data really caused us to want to go in this direction, because while we thought, having done a group of projects for safety, that we would see some improvement on the data from 2013, and we found that no, we haven't. That we still have a number of very critical spots, and I do have a map that's kind of impressive. I'll just pass it around, but you can probably see here the more dots on the map, the more accidents that have happened in this area. So our major accident areas are Palm Canyon, Indian is quite big, the curve at East Palm Canyon, or South Palm Canyon to East Palm Canyon is a critical area. Ramon and Sunrise are really pretty much our major areas for accidents. And so imagine this as a computer page, but it really, if you were to 3D it, you would see that there are really stacks of accidents in some of these locations. So it made so much sense to take this data, bring the police together with engineering, and say, what can we do to make this better? What we've learned from the first project and moving forward is that one of the major issues, and probably the major issue, is to the kinds of accidents or the kinds of injuries that people suffer in accidents, as well as death as a result of accidents or collisions, is speed. And the faster the speed of the vehicle, the more serious the injuries, including death. Death increases just about 8-fold when the speed of the colliding vehicles are over 40 miles an hour. So that's a very critical thing. So that's the sort of thing we're looking at. What Palm Springs Police has agreed to do is take a look at these areas, do some focused enforcement with vehicles, pedestrians, and bicycles. And what engineering has done, which I think is absolutely beautiful, is they looked at this and they put together, they responded to a grant that CBAG put together just a couple of months ago. And I want to say six of the projects which are associated with this were accepted in the grant, and the grant will pay up to 80% of the expense of doing this work. And so Measure J is recommending to council that Measure J pays the additional $2 million to make up the difference to get these critical projects completed. So I think it's amazing that we've gone from where we were in 2013 to where we are today. The city has an opportunity to do some planning, work together to make things happen. We're using data generated by the city. We're not going out to residents at this point in time. We may at some point, the commission may at some point in the future, but there are some very nice, I think the end result will be very good for the community and for our visitors. So that's pretty much where we were and where we are now. I will say that, and you may be seeing this around town, we had a couple of fatalities just before the end of the year on Vistachino and Miraleste. Miraleste is one of the traffic calming areas, but the accidents, the fatalities have been very serious. And Caltrans has been working with One Palm Springs to improve that area and make it safer, but also to do a safety-related program for the residents of Palm Springs. And as this began to roll out, it became the residents of the Coachella Valley, and it now includes Yucca Valley and Morongo Valley. Highway 62 is at right at the turnoff for Joshua Tree Park, has been restriped into a sort of a road diet to try and prevent some of this. And these are billboards that Lamar has donated for this effort. San Bernardino, Riverside will all start working on this kind of an effort to prevent some of these pedestrian and bicycle situations. So you may have seen these. I've seen 4 of them now. They're on I-10. There's one on the Dinah Shore. But my hope is that that people will take note of this and think a little bit. There's also, and I would invite everybody to a press conference on Tuesday at 9 o'clock at City Hall, where Caltrans will roll this out and share the program with the public. Although I just shared it with you, so don't tell anybody. Questions? I'm happy to respond to questions about any of the projects, about selection of projects.
Christine, I just want to say we appreciate the partnership that we've had with Measure J in active transportation, the bike lanes and the pedestrian projects, but most of all, thank you for being a good communicator. That has been an important component in this relationship, so thank you very much.
It's amazing how that works, isn't it? And I'll say, 4 years at least, we've been talking about walkability. I used the survey, the windshield survey that Sustainability did 4 years ago, as part of the sidewalk projects that are going to be completed this year. Not all of them, but a lot of them. It's that sort of thing. It's like when it comes in front of, when people start seeing things, they remember, and then they can move forward on them. So I would encourage everybody to cross-communicate with other commissions, because things can happen there. So, yep.
Other commissioner, yes, Commissioner McCann.
So in your talk, you said you were talking about the clustering.
Yes.
On those particular areas, and then the next thing that you talked about immediately was speed.
Yes.
So my question is the most straightforward and simple solution to lower the speed limit on those particular roadways?
It sounds like it should be extremely simple and to accomplish, but it is not. And that relates to engineers and the law. The speed of traffic on streets, I'll say I'm not an engineer, so I'm probably going to butcher this a little bit, but the speed of traffic on streets is determined by the speed of traffic on streets. So when you see one of those little trailers out on a roadway, it is recording all of the data, or all the speed data from the cars passing by at that given point in time. What the city does is they look at the data and pick out that 85%. What is the 85 percentile? And they will set the speed limit for that. That is based on what can be supported in a court of law when somebody is given a ticket and they go to defend the speed that they were driving. So there's a lot of conversation about that, and one of the things that's happening all over the country, and I will say in many places throughout the world, Scandinavian countries in particular, is what is called complete streets. So rather than looking at intersections, they're looking at travel corridors, and what on each side of an intersection is actually potentially impacting what happens there, but also out here. And one of the things that they're talking about is slowing the speed of traffic. So my question then for engineering is, why can LA or San Francisco do something like that and we can't? Well, what LA and San Francisco are doing, I'm learning, is they're engineering a reduced speed of traffic based on traffic calming measures. So as an example, they will put an island in the median similar to what we've got, I think over there on Tockwitz now. Well, we had it before, but what we have on Tockwitz is an island, and the island itself will cause people to slow down. The other thing that would go along with that would be to reduce the width of the travel lane a little bit, which again causes people to slow down. Our perception is to stay between the lines, and so they do that. So there are a number of other things that engineers would recommend doing for that sort of thing. It's all very expensive, and my hope is when this new project rolls out, there may be some money to do some of these traffic calming things that will slow traffic on Ramon, Palm Canyon, Indian, Sunrise, East Palm Canyon, which is our heaviest vehicle accident locations. So yeah, that's a great question. And it doesn't, logically it doesn't make sense to me, but I get that they've got to be able to support it in a court of law in order to give the tickets. So, and we're excited that that the city police will make an effort to really do some specialized enforcement in these areas on the map. So in the areas that are critical accident areas, they will make an effort to do more enforcement there as they can. And we know that they do what they can do.
Vice Chair Wilson?
I was just going to make a comment about the 85th percentile.
Yeah.
I think it's funny how the speed limits are in increments of 5, when actually if you average out how fast people are going and you take an 85th percentile, that's probably not always in an increment of 5. And there have been jurisdictions that have experimented with having a speed limit of, say, 37 miles per hour. And those have been fairly successful because people are taken aback by peculiar speed limits.
when you run across that data, those articles again, would you email that to me, and then I'll have more to argue about. I only have another year to argue, so.
Gladly.
Yes, you had a question.
Yes,
So I noticed that a lot of the accidents are at intersections.
Yes.
Especially away from the, the Palm Canyon corridor. So I'm assuming that that's been looked at as to, why the accidents are happening primarily at intersections, and if this project is going to be addressing that directly.
The primarily accidents at intersections are turn-related accidents, so right or left turn, and yes, that will be looked at. Yes, good question. Anything else?
Other commissioners?
Thank you for inviting me and giving me an opportunity to talk about this. I could talk about streets too, if you'd like to do.
Thank you.
So I had a couple of things floating around. There's one.
They're all right
Okay.
here, I think, with Greg moving that way. So.
Is a quick question, is the map showing the accident locations, is that publicly available? Is that posted on the city's website by chance?
I don't think it's on the website, but I sure can email it to you for distribution.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, you send it to Dan, and he'll get it out to everybody. Perfect, great, thank you. All right, we're at item C, meeting minutes from the June meeting. Tonight, well, by email this afternoon, and you've got a printed copy at your place of the minutes, which have been corrected with the emails that you all sent in earlier. So is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented? So moved by Vice Chair Wilson, second? Second from Commissioner Gauthier. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Opposed say no. Abstain, and we are approved for our minutes of June 20th. Mr. Calhoun, speak to us about recycling.
Good evening. I spoke with Chris Cunningham of Palm Springs Disposal regarding two things. The first was adding a third cleanup event. As a review, Palm Springs Disposal currently conducts two cleanup events, one in the spring, the third week of April, one in the fall, the third week of October. During that week, residents can call in and have items picked up curbside. On the Saturday of that week, they can bring items to the rear of City Hall where Palm Springs Disposal sets up their trucks and they collect the items there. We're asking that Palm Springs Disposal consider adding a third Saturday-only event. We don't want to do it throughout the week. The cost to do that is a bit prohibitive. It's $8,000 to $10,000. So what we're doing is we're writing letters to Riverside County as well as Burtec asking them to waive the tipping fee. That'll help offset part of the cost. The second thing that I spoke to him about is AB 1826, and also as a review, that's the ordinance, or that's the law that requires commercial organics recycling. Last year it started at 8 cubic yards. This year it was 4 cubic yards. As of 1 July next year, it will fall to 2 cubic yards. Anybody creating more than that will be required to participate in the commercial organics recycling. And that's when a lot of people are going to really take notice. So what Chris recommended was that maybe we start thinking about a written campaign or the campaigns that we can go out and inform these people ahead of time so it doesn't come as a shock to them as of 1 July next year that you're now required to participate in this program. Much like we did with AB 341, the commercial recycling, where we visited every business, we handed them a packet and explained to them the law and its effects on them. The city has decided that they want to go to 4 shredding and e-waste events a year, and most likely we'll have those in October, December, February, and April. That's not set in stone, but that's about every 2 months during the season, as you might call it. Seems to work best. We're getting rid of the e-waste bin that we currently have in the public works yard. It's open to the public 24/7, and it's not working out. There's a lot of things that go on that I'm sure the city doesn't want to go on there. It's just a collection area for trash and all things that we don't want to participate in. Okay, and we met with Commissioners Daniel, Stacy, and myself met with Commissioners Clark and McCain, and to talk about the C&D ordinance, or not necessarily the C&D ordinance, it's called the Preferred Hauler Program, and I'm sure that they'll elaborate more during their comments. And the last thing is the annual report, which is due 1 August, is almost complete, so hopefully that'll be that for this year. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Your comments about creating a publicity packet for, it's AB 1828?
1826.
1826. Do you need help from commissioners on that, or is that something you're working on?
Well, we would certainly be interested if they want to participate, but we pretty much have a generic letter and how we want to go about it, but we would welcome any ideas that they may have or any thoughts, so certainly.
Okay, all right.
We have discussed that
Yeah.
in a Waste Reduction Committee meeting, and Dan sent out a copy of the letter that was sent out in 2016. And we haven't met subsequently, but I was thinking it probably would be a good idea if all of us who participated in that meeting take a look at the letter and mark it up in terms what really needs to be updated now that it's a year later and we're getting closer to the next change in the law. That might be a good starting point.
Sure. Yeah. And it'll also include just not the written material that will be handed to the particular entities involved, but also it'll be the closed circuit TV, any other way that we can get the message out is what we will be looking at.
And Chair, just to note, this is just the beginning. This really needs to be a full campaign. The letters, it's a letter, it tends to be a little dry, so anything that we can do to really draw attention to this, and as we're saying, PowerPoint presentation that we can continue to run. If there's a very short version that we can put on the Palm Springs radio, we have to do that. But as this is now, really not on the forefront of most of the merchants' minds, it's becoming more and more urgent for us to try to begin this education process.
One thing we did with AB 341, which was quite an endeavor, is we met with the local groups like the merchants groups, and in this case we would meet with any restaurateurs. So whatever we can do to get the message out and explain to them and try and make it as easy a transition. The problem is going to be the cost, as we've discussed before, because organics, especially food waste, is so heavy that you can't take nearly as much in one load as you could take with trash, and you have to transport it all the way down to Coachella. You can't just take it to Edom Hill. So that's a long haul, a lot of cost, time, things like that. So we have to explain to them why the cost will be as it is.
Commissioners, questions of Gary? Okay, I think we get it. If you need help, I would think the Waste Reduction Committee is your place to be, so
right. Well,
appreciate your help.
Chris and city staff are already working with that group of people to talk about the preferred hauler, so this seems to be a natural thing to fall into next.
Great. All right. Thank you, Gary.
Okay.
All right, we're at new business, item 1. Commissioner Gauthier had expressed a willingness to do a little follow-up on the presentation that we had from the Coachella Valley Mountains Conservancy. As he explained, quite a number of dollars available for grants, and so Commissioner Gauthier, tell us what you're thinking.
Sure. Just a quick reminder that the Coachella Valley Mountains Conservancy had about $10 million in funding through the Prop 1 program to spend on projects that have a nexus with water conservation or other habitat goals within the region, and they're having trouble identifying viable projects for that. So as follow-up to Jim's presentation last month, I did some research on what groups are doing projects that might have a nexus with that Prop 1 funding in this region, and found, as probably most of you are aware, that the Friends of Palm Springs Mountains has been working for about 13 years to protect local mountain and alluvial fan habitat and views and recreational values, and since 2006 have been working with the city on acquiring lands from willing sellers for preservation of our alluvial fans and mountainsides. And That sounded like a good place to start, so I contacted Pete Dangerman, who I was familiar with in other professional capacity, and asked him if he was aware of anything that the projects the Friends group might have that would be a nexus, or other groups in the area. And he did have a couple of potential project ideas that the Friends are interested in Chino Canyon, of relatively small size, and looked like it might be a good fit for the program. So I spoke with Nikki McLaughlin, who's the president of the Friends group, and she was also very interested in exploring that possibility, as is, I'm going to slaughter the name because I don't know how to pronounce it, but Kathy Weirmuth, the chair of the Planning Commission, is also interested in getting involved in that and potentially forming an ad hoc committee to look at those projects and see if there's merit there, and if the city would be interested in partnering with the Friends of Palm Springs Mountains to put a proposal in October for some of that funding. So I'd like to volunteer to be on an ad hoc committee along with Kathy from the Planning Commission and anyone else that would be interested, in city staff, if that's something we're interested in doing.
So, this would be a planning commission ad hoc committee, or where would it initiate, Greg, do you think? I mean, with us, with them?
I thought it would initiate with us.
With us. Oh, okay, fine, sure, okay. So I think if you're willing, we can have an ad hoc committee to work on this project. And would we invite Kathy to participate, or I mean, okay, so to have a partnership with planning? Okay. Yes. Okay, all right, can we do that tonight?
Commissioners, before we wrap that up, I would also like to add that the city is working on considering 2 possible grant applications with the Conservancy also. One is for the acquisition of Chino Cone properties to maintain them as open space. The other is to improve, I believe it's the water flow in another section that would allow for sewer construction to be built. So there's a element of the grant application that actually could be used towards that.
Okay, in that area, in the Chino Canyon or Chino Cone area, is that where the water issue is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So Jay, what? I mean, I think it's certainly fine that the city's pursuing that, and money's out there, and it ought to be gotten if we can get it. What are you suggesting? Is it can we assign Greg that responsibility from the commission tonight?
Absolutely. I would just like to remind the commission that the process is completing applications due January 2018, and so there would be a little work putting the grant applications together. So that would be involved with the process for all parties planning to submit.
Well, so maybe what we could do is, if you're willing, Greg, we could task you to work with Jay in this process, and that would be an appropriate coordination then with Planning Commission and with Kathy Weirmuth. Would that make sense?
I think it makes sense.
Okay.
The only other piece is we may have some additional staff in City Hall who can also assist with preparing the
well, sure.
So.
Sure. Yep. Okay. All right. You're willing, Greg?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. And it's good to know. I mean, I noticed during the presentation, Jay, that you were actively taking notes as he was talking about those things. So I'm really glad that you took some initiative to check out what might be a fit for us as well. All right, great. Anything else, Commissioner Gothier?
That's it.
Okay. All right. Okay, we're at item number 2. I wasn't sure, as I was creating the agenda, if we would actually have a resolution we needed to look at tonight or not. So I guess my question is, do we need to take item 2 now, or do we just need to wait and hear your committee report under G3? Rob, Roy, what should we do?
We can certainly discuss it now.
All right. So item 2 is to discuss the preferred construction and demolition hauling issue. So it's yours.
And I think a clarification is in order on that issue right off the bat. From my understanding now, after having talked to Chris Cunningham this week with Roy, the initial step here is for an ordinance that will essentially do a plus up on the amount of tonnage that's coming from construction and demolition facilities that go to a diversion point rather than going right to the landfills. So that's going to be the content of the ordinance that we're working on. I think Gary's going to take the lead on that. Roy and I are going to work more on some of the supporting documentation for purposes of putting together a staff report. Once we, or if we are successful in getting that ordinance in front of City Council and getting them to pass it, then it opens the door and makes it much easier for this preferred hauling program to come in and say, this is what we can offer. And then if that happens, we will have accomplished a good goal. So that's what we've been talking, we've had a couple of meetings this month, and that's in essence what's going on there.
Okay. So we might hear more by our September meeting?
Yes, we have a timeline of activities that we discussed. Today was to bring this up and discuss it to the commission and basically get hopefully a thumbs up to continue to move forward on this ordinance. And then we're going to work on those 2 documents, the ordinance itself, a draft of it, and the staff reports. Hopefully have drafts of those available then for the September meeting for people to review. We'd also like to, at some point in the next 2 months, arrange a meeting, if we can, with Jeff Coors and J.R. Roberts, the 2 sustainability, or the waste people on City Council, and give them a heads up about what we want to do, what we want to accomplish, and in particular, we're also getting a lot of background here on the data that we want to present to them, the amount of tonnage that's going right to the landfills now, that sort of thing from the city, so that they'll have a kind of a stronger handle on what we're up to and why we're up to doing it.
Right. So what would presumably happen for us next is that we would see and discuss this resolution that mandates that it go to a diversion facility. So we would discuss that first, recommend that, and that paves the way for the next step.
That's exactly my understanding of the process.
All right. Okay. Commissioners, questions for the waste reduction group? Is there sentiment about their process, or do you any objection to them moving forward as Rob explained?
Is that how you guys are? Okay, yeah, that sounds
Yes.
fine.
Okay. All right.
There was another activity that we engaged in this month. Is now a good time to just
Go ahead.
Get everything done and
Yep. We can take care of it all right now.
Okay, the other thing that we did is on July 12th, Roy and I, together with several other Coachella Valley people, we went out and did a tour of the Paris, California CR&R Environmental Services Anaerobic Digester Facility. Sorry, I had to read that instead of memorizing it. It's a very impressive facility. What they're doing is they've got this company has the contract to haul for several Inland Empire cities. And right now, they're taking the green waste, the waste that's in the green bins, and some food waste, and they're putting it into these big bins, and it sits in there for about 21 days. The microbes do their bit, and what comes out the other side is methane. So then the methane they're using now primarily to power their own fleet of trucks, so it's like this little closed loop system. We were very impressed with this technology. And so the next steps that we think we'd like to do and and go forward here is to approach CVAG in some capacity and say we think that we need one of these facilities for the Coachella Valley, for all of our communities, and band together and see if that might be a feasible way to go forward and actually get one of these built out here. There is a couple of competitors. There is another facility apparently somewhere else in California, Roy, I can't remember where it is right now, but it's a cogen facility instead, and would take all this waste and create energy out of it. So it's jumping the gun a little bit to say, oh yes, we need this kind of technology in this facility out here, but one of these is probably a good idea to look at for the future. So we're going to, as I say, try to pursue this with some other cities and take it in front of CVAG and at least get them familiar with it.
And so it probably, I was just going to say, if in fact you end up scheduling a meeting with council members Coors and Roberts, you might just alert them to this topic as well. I know that Councilmember Coors is on the environmental subcommittee for CVAG, and I don't know if JR, I don't know what all JR might do, so you might just alert them as well. Commissioner Clark.
Yeah, and one thing that we were talking about in a discussion after the tour was that would be a really good solution for the AB 1826 organics waste issue. In fact, it was explained to us on the tour that like leaves and grass clippings are more difficult to digest, but they have developed a process and a system that can do that well. And it takes about 21 days, as Rob said, but organic waste like food could be digested in a much shorter period of time. So it would be a really good solution for that issue, which is coming up.
And just to follow up on Roy's point, yeah, that's important. So we did ask Chris Cunningham what he thought of getting a facility like that out here, and he was very positive about it for the simple reason that it's Palm Springs Disposal Services is going to have the responsibility in the next few years of dealing with a lot more food waste than they are now as these California directives come through, and this would be a perfect place to take it.
Yes.
If I could almost comment, years ago there used to be a thing called ADC, Alternative Daily Cover, and what you were allowed to do when Edom Hill was still active is you could take the green waste and use it to spread out, and that would help with the digestion and the breaking down of all the materials. The state did away with that, so now you have all that additional green waste that has to go somewhere. So that would be another reason for the anaerobic digester.
Commissioners, yes, Commissioner Friedman.
I was also on the tour and found it absolutely fascinating. I met briefly with Katie Barrows of CVAG to talk about the CNE, and I'll get to that in due course, but she was quite interested, and I think one of the reasons that they organized this tour is they would love to see something like that in the Coachella Valley. So I follow up with Katie and Benjamin, and I think as part of the partnership with Palm Springs, which is working out quite well, they would very much welcome and encourage our involvement and getting the other cities involved. So I think that there'd be quite a receptive year to work with CVAG on this.
Other commissioners?
I have a question.
Yes.
So I'm a little bit curious about the byproduct. So methane is generated and then it's used as energy for vehicle fleets?
Or about 3/4 of it at the moment is used for the vehicle fleet. They're actually overproducing their initial estimates, and they're able to sell the other quarter to whoever is picking up natural gas these days.
And then what is the byproduct of the combustion?
There's two byproducts. The natural gas is the primary one. It's the overwhelming largest one. It also, however, produces CO2. And so that was the only part of the closed loop system that was a little bit problematic. Right now, they're just, the CO2 goes into water and it becomes carbonated, and then you have to decarbonate it, and the CO2 from there just goes up into the air. So there is a greenhouse gas that's being generated here. However, they have plans to do something about that. I was a little fuzzy on what the plans actually were, but they want to be able to recover it and not just send it up into the air.
But it is ultimately environmentally beneficial because methane is not being released into the atmosphere.
Correct. The methane is not being released. The
And
methane's
methane is
all
in
being
this-
captured.
Yeah.
And the capture rate was really high, it's 98% or something.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
And actually, they have a, part of their facility, there's a point where they will actually inject this methane into lines that will go to the gas company. So they'll be selling excess gas to the Southern California Gas Company.
I'm sorry, that's correct, right, it's the gas company that's
Right.
buying their excess gas, yeah. Just one more point in case, this is high technology, they are getting some subsidies from 3 different sources to do it. And so the end cost to the consumers in these cities right now is about $2 extra a month compared to what it was.
You can't go away from this commission meeting tonight without saying you haven't learned a few things. You are now learning about anaerobic waste processing, so good. Other questions? This is great, I mean, it's always interesting to see these new developments, so thank you. Thanks to both of you.
And thanks to Dan for inviting us to that tour.
Yeah. All right, we are at item number 3 in new business, commission chair and vice chair elections for the current fiscal year 2017-18. There has been a suggestion that we table that until, a commissioner suggested we table it till September, but it is on the agenda for tonight, so it is before you.
What exactly is before us?
Well, it's on the agenda, so we either have nominations or we postpone till September.
It's on your agenda because this is the 1-year mark. You have
Yes.
there's absolutely no reason you have to do it now. If you decide you want to wait, you can make a motion to have this forwarded to your next agenda.
Okay. Commissioner Clark?
I think we should wait.
Okay, all right. I think it could make sense, given as we're in sort of staff transitions and all, it might just give us a chance to sort all that out and then have the elections in September. But
I guess I have to.
Are you making a motion to table?
Yes, I'm making a motion.
Okay, all right.
That
I
we.
don't know my parliamentary procedure well enough, but I.
Need a second?
Pardon me? Do I need a second for that? Yes. I do. Is there a second?
Oh, there you go.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Futterman seconded, and so other discussion? Commissioner Gothier.
Yeah, for those of us that haven't been through the election process before, can you just tell us how it's been handled at the past meeting? Do you do nominations and then everybody votes?
Yes.
Raising their hand?
Nominations from the floor. People indicate whether, I mean, there have been persons who've indicated whether or not they're interested or not in a leadership role. I'm sure there are individual conversations that happen, outside commission meetings between individual commissioners, but it's nominations are just handled here on the floor of the meeting. I've served for 2 years as chair. At this point, I have 1 more year on my term. Vice Chair Wilson has been vice chair for also 2 years?
Correct.
And has 2 more years on his term.
So that was going to be my next question. Is there a sort of a standard for length of service in those positions among the various commissions in the city, or is it get the seat and keep it?
I don't think there is a standard among commissions. The person who was the chair of the commission before me served 4 or 5 years of his 6-year term as chair.
The only standard is that we do an annual review and revote. That's really it. And as long as they're willing to do it and to hold those positions and take on obviously some additional responsibilities, that's really all that's required.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I should have explained a little bit more given the new commissioners. Thanks, Greg. Other questions before we vote? So the vote is to table this item until September. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed say no. All right, we are tabled. Okay, we're at old business. Last month we talked in item 1 a little bit about having a sustainability booth at the farmer's market. Commissioner Wangler is going to give that a little thought to see if there was a process rather than 9 of us figuring it out. Where are we there?
We're no further along.
Okay.
So
all right.
we'll have to keep it as old business
Okay.
till September.
All right. That's fine. And we do have an item in F2, the Zero Net Energy Workshop. Commissioners Friedman and Goins, you've read their report, and a motion to authorize $10,000 from our budget. So Commissioner Goins and Friedman, I don't know if either of you want to speak to it.
I can sort of, just as Commissioners Clark and McKenna, I can kind of combine this with the Green Building Report because it's pretty much the same thing. Okay. So we have been working very closely, I guess sort of former Commissioner Otto, I'm not sure how to describe him, ex-Commissioner Otto and Commissioner Goins and I have met and are in fact meeting again this Thursday. We now have a date, which is Thursday, November 16th for the ZNA seminar. We have commitments from CVAG, DVBA, Desert Valley Builders Association, SCE, and the U.S. Green Building Council, and we're having a kickoff conference call with confirmed participants as part of our meeting, committee meeting this coming Thursday. So we believe at a budget of $10,000, this was I believe in the previous report, would be sufficient, and the maximum we are looking at sponsorships. As I mentioned, I did meet with Katie Barrows of CVAG right after the AD tour last week, and she'll be looking to provide some support using some of the funds that they have from SCE and the gas company. So I can't promise it, but she did seem to be quite favorable. I know Mr. Otto is looking for some additional sources of support. We're going to reach out to some of the other cities. We had a representative from Indio on the tour with us, and I did email her about it. Perhaps some of the other cities might be able to kick in something. So once again, it would be the budget of $10,000, but a strong goal to keep the Palm Springs portion of that to $2,500 to $5,000, and reach out for sponsorships from the various events for DVBA. Once again, we'll sponsor and get some people to cover some of the food and some of the professional organizations to kick in with some sponsorships, because it'll be for their members as well. So I guess it would probably be a motion to approve an expenditure of $10,000 and direct the committee to work, Green Building Committee to work on that, and we'd come back in September with a further report and perhaps a more defined budget. Obviously, the more people we have, there is food that we will be providing food, so the budget would be higher if we get more people, which is our goal, but then we'd be reaching out to food sponsors to cover that extra cost.
So since this is coming from a subcommittee, I assumed it's coming to us with a motion and second from you and Commissioner Goins. So let me just ask in our discussion section, I know Commissioner Goins, you've been diving into the budget in some detail, so while we've not looked at that yet till we get to that item, I assume your comment to us is that a budget expenditure of the amount that we're discussing is of no problem in our fiscal year budget coming forward from program.
Yeah, well, to be honest, we're still researching the budget and learning, but it doesn't look like it's going to be a problem. And the committee discussed it, and I think we already support this idea. So,
questions? All right. All in favor of the motion as presented, say yes.
Yes. Yes.
Opposed, say no. Abstain, and the motion passes unanimously. All right, we are at committee and commissioner reports, and so the first one is the Green Building Report, which, David, you were already discussing. Are there other items there if you want to conclude
very
that?
quickly.
Okay.
Also good news, we've submitted a proposal to Modernism Week for a workshop on interior green building techniques during Modernism Week 2018, also with the U.S. Green Building Council and the American Society of Interior Designers, and Commissioner Goins would serve as the moderator for that 1-hour workshop. We have so far a favorable sort of interest from Modernism Week. They are meeting tomorrow to consider the proposal, but I'm in touch, including yesterday, with Lisa Vossler-Smith, the Executive Director of Modernism Week, and she didn't have any questions and seemed quite favorably inclined. This would be in the first sort of couple of days of Modernism Week, probably the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which is President's Day weekend. And the advantage is that a number of the members of the American Society of Interior Designers LA chapter are in town for that. And once again, this would be very much pitched for their members. And so it does look like we'd have a favorable treatment. So stay tuned. I'll have an answer probably first thing Thursday morning, and have asked for that from Ms. Smith so I can report back at the Green Building Committee meeting. And probably not much or very de minimis budget, just because it would be an official Modernism Week event at their camp facility and their tickets, and perhaps there might be some collateral PR from the city, but de minimis.
Okay. Questions of Commissioner Friedman about the Green Building Standing Committee report? Okay. Thank you very much. All right, now item 2 is Commissioner Friedman again.
Okay.
Speak to us about the solar mandate process. Okay,
Because of the various other agenda commitments, including leaf blower, City Council's phone discussion of the solar mandate till after returns from the August break, I'm not sure. I guess the September agendas are being worked out. September 20th council meeting is being moved around because that's the first evening of Rosh Hashanah. So Councilmember Coors and City Attorney Godkin have indicated they will not be available. I would also not be available. So there won't be a City Council meeting on the 20th, and it's unclear whether it be the 27th or the 13th, but that'll 13th or the 6th. The regular meetings on the 6th. So we'll see exactly what there is. The one, or if there's any advantage of the postponement, is that there is an additional California Energy Commission workshop, which is on sort of a webinar live, but you can watch in, which I will be doing. That was supposed to be next week, but it's been rescheduled for August 22nd, so I'll be able to have more information about what the state is planning and be able to benchmark the city's proposal for 2 watts per square foot against what is expected to be mandatory statewide starting in 2020. And Mr. Stone's mention of mandatory storage is something that the Energy Commission is looking at. Whether it's absolutely required or not depends to be seen. They're looking at that, though, as technology develops, and I expect that if it's not for 2020, maybe for 2023, the state will likely require storage. So we'll see. He raised an interesting point, and the Energy Commission is looking at that. Excuse me. City Council approved participation in the CVAG's Community Choice Aggregation Program at its meeting earlier this month. Palm Springs is the first city to do so. CCA will be rolled out next year and will give consumers the choice of electricity from 100% or 50% green energy choices. So if you go with CCA, you can do their default, which would be 50% green energy. Currently, what you're getting from SCE is roughly about 28%. You can choose 100% green energy if you want to, or you can just stay with SCE. So it really will be 3 choices of stay with SCE, go with CCA, or you're in CCA, you have to opt out to go into to stay with SCE. But if you stay with CCA, you get either 50% or 100% green energy. And then following up on a discussion last month, I did research the FAA's Voluntary Airport Low Emissions Program and confirmed that Palm Springs International Airport is eligible to apply for a grant from the FAA for various sort of energy matters, but in particular for solar panel systems to generate electricity. I looked at what some of the other California airports are doing. And the Energy Commission, as part of this sort of move to solar and energy conservation, also has grants for airport solar installation. and linked into CCA, because CCA will be selling all of this green energy. They'll be looking for additional sources to generate it locally. So there may be some opportunities to create a solar farm at the airport to generate electricity bought by the CCA and then resold. So it would be very much sort of a row your own kind of thing. And so there, I think, would be some opportunities for the Airport Commission, Tom Nolan, the Airport Commission, to follow up on that, at least do some additional research. So I'm not sure how that, perhaps you can relay that to Mr. Nolan, but it is a possibility. And what a number of airports commissions have done, there are some consultants who help you out with that for a small fee, quote unquote. But there are grants. It's just as many cases, applying for grants. The grants are available, and you have to have a good grant and a good proposal.
And Commissioner Friedman, if you could forward the grant information to
Yes, I'll be happy to do that. I've sort of noted it, and Chair Jackson had sent me some materials. One link wasn't working, but I'll forward that and some links to the what I was able to find. So I'll take care of that tomorrow. So that's it for solar for the moment.
So let me ask, and I know, Jay, this is new information, and you'll be checking this out. But I'm wondering, after you do some bit of research, I wonder if it could loop back to us for a report from you. I mean, while I know it would ultimately be the Airport Commission that would need to do it, we are the commission that advocates for these sorts of energy issues. So I think it makes sense for us to talk about it, and maybe not only the staff level connection, but maybe at the commission level, we would discuss it. And if we thought it was a good idea, we would pass some sort of resolution and communicate that to the council and to the Airport Commission. So, I think if we just we'll have you get your process going and keep us informed.
All right, and I'll send an email in the morning with my research and some of the materials that I downloaded and copy you, Chair Jackson.
Great. Okay. Now let me go back to any other questions for Commissioner Friedman on this subcommittee report, item 2.
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I'm curious about the mix of energy sources for CCA. Is it consistent? Are you able to, if you decide to make that choice, can you determine prior to making that choice what those sources of alternative energy are?
Based on what I've been reading, the answer is no, which means it's going to be whatever is the most, and it's going to be variable, because you're going to be buying. The CCA will be just like Edison and the other investor-owned utilities in something called CAL-ISO, which is essentially the wholesaler for roughly 80% of all electricity generated and consumed in California, with some discussion of extending it to adjoining states. But for the moment, it's essentially the California supplier. So they're going to be buying, and they're pretty much just going to put an order for X number of kilowatt hours, and it's going to be whatever is available on the system, which means in the evening it's probably going to be wind, and during the day it's going to be solar, and it's just going to be part of what's available. One of the advantages of the CCA as purchaser is that, and their search for additional sources, is this could be potentially additional economic incentive for putting geothermal down in the Salton Sea. That doesn't exist, but given everything else that's going on in the Salton Sea, it's sort of a plus. I mean, the technology is slowly coming on, the economics aren't quite there, and there is not sort of an additional economic incentive for geothermal to the way there is, or at least the technology is more developed in wind and solar. So I think largely it's going to be, some's going to be solar and some going to be wind. Down the road, I think there may be some more geothermal coming in. No nuclear though. I mean, that would not be considered a renewable energy. I mean, there's very little nuclear in California anymore anyway.
Yeah, I asked the question because there are numerous distinctions between the environmental effects of different types of renewable energy generation. So I'm curious about that. Thanks.
Other questions? Thank you, Commissioner Friedman. Item 3, waste reduction. So did we, Commissioner McCann, we covered that completely?
We covered it completely, yes.
Okay, all right. We're at item 4, active transportation. Vice Chair Wilson and Commissioner Gauthier, anything tonight?
No report this month.
Okay, fine. So we do have a report on G5, the ad hoc committee on the budget. Commissioners Goins, Clark, and Wangler have been working, and you have a report. Who is speaking? Is it Commissioner Goins?
I guess I'll say a few things.
Okay.
So one way to look at what we are attempting to do is, I mean, obviously, the budget is our means to deploy the sustainability master plan. So what we really have been thinking about are better ways to sort of operationalize that plan, pick it apart, turn it into things that we can do given our budget and our constraints. So we've been thinking about options and ways we can use the budget to support that. So to that effect, we had a couple of meetings, one phone call with city staff and Michelle Mycian to kind of develop some, to get some legacy information basically about, some of the projects that she worked on and understand what her thought process was when she left. Then we had a second meeting with just the 3 of us where we kind of synthesized the material. And based on those 2 meetings, we kind of came up with a few thoughts that we wanted to throw out to the commission for discussion, really, just to kind of let everyone know where our heads are and get a lot of feedback, hopefully a lot of feedback. And one of the first things that we noticed after looking at the material we've received from the city is that there's sort of, over the last 5 years, sort of a straight line on our budget. So the amount of funds that we have available to us hasn't really shrunk, but the way we've allocated them has. So given that, it seems that we can potentially hire a staff person if that's the way the commission decides it wants to move. We're not taking a position necessarily, officially, but we want to say that's what we're seeing so far, make the commission aware and see what your thoughts were. The second thing is we were thinking about, given that there will be a new fiscal year coming up, I guess the fiscal year's already started, so we'll be dark in August, I guess, and so when we start in September, that a budgetary planning item would be a good thing for us to think about. Just a useful exercise where we can kind of maybe not go through the entire master plan, but just kind of pick a few points and say this is what we intend to do, and maybe attach some budget items to those tasks so that we can be a little more effective is the word I think I'd like to use there. So again, something for the commission to think about. Do we want to agendize, a yearly budgeting planning activity that we, have done some homework and come back and think about, and would that be a yearly activity that we'd engage in? And so 2 more quick points. Given that this commission is advisory to council, our role, and we've done this with the solar mandate and with the leaf blower ordinance, is we've given feedback. And so I think both the master plan and sort of what this commission was set up to do supports the idea that there would be other activities where we'd offer feedback. So a few ideas would be CEQA reports for projects that require discretionary approval, but that also mesh with the sustainability master plan. So a lot of times projects might have, maybe an economic sustainability component or an active transportation component. Those would be things that I think city council and in some cases staff might find our comments and thoughts useful. The same could be true for large purchases that have sustainability impacts that might relate to the master plan. What those are, I can't foresee right now. So that would be something that, staff would have to sort of keep in mind and present to us, if the thresholds were appropriate, probably not for small small purchases, but for larger ones that have real impacts that could make sense. One project that we've been talking about recently is the cogen project, and I'm one of the newer commissioners, so I wasn't involved in sort of setting that up. But one of the things our subcommittee talked about was being involved in the review of those projects when they're being implemented. So as an example, I'm particularly interested in the commissioning of the cogen plant, just because I've actually worked on, been involved in commissioning for, large commercial buildings, and I find it interesting, and I think technical support there from the commission could be useful. So again, ways that this commission can support council, can support, city activities, given our charter and the sustainability master plan. And finally, ordinances, which we're already doing, but I didn't want to leave that out. Last bullet point today was just a list of projects that we thought, if we do decide to agendize a September planning activity, these are kind of the ones that bubble to the surface based on our conversations, based on conversations with Michelle and staff, that we might want to think about for next year, or just throwing out some ideas. So basically, what we're attempting to do here is throw a lot at the wall and see what sticks. And in those 4 categories, basically, is if we decide that it's necessary to hire a staff person, that seems to be possible. Some additional review of the budget is needed. That's the first point. The second point is the planning budgetary item for the September meeting. The third is increasing our technical support role to council and to staff. And the fourth is just some simple plans, some simple projects. So there are 2 items that we actually wanted the commission to actively consider, and they might require a motion. And the first one is agendizing the budgetary planning item for September. And then the second one would be the set of, it will be a recommendation to council that, hey, use us more, basically, and here's how we could be used on CEQA projects, on purchase items, things like that. So one of the things that's often said at the commission is that we speak with our recommendations, and so this would be, this is what we'd be doing, is saying to council, hey, council, here's how we can help, and it's related to the master plan, it's related to what this commission is about, so at least consider it. Okay. So, yeah. Did that make sense?
It did.
Good.
Okay, so, and I know everyone's read your report as it came out in our packet. So it seems, several things, but a couple of things that pop out at me is that in your section on findings, item 2, in which you talk about having an annual task and budgetary planning meeting, but you reference the sustainability master plan as our key document. I think that's important for us to realize. We spent years working on that as a roadmap forward, and you reference the 30 next steps, which we've not looked at recently as carefully as we might. So, I see that also sort of relating to your number 4, which are just specific projects. Some of those projects may flow out of the next steps. Maybe they do, maybe they don't.
Right.
But it would be interesting to see if there is any overlap there. The other thing that I will mention, and Stacy's well aware of this, is that in some years in the past, there has been additional commission meetings on off-meeting dates for planning purposes, for looking at broader issues, having a more informal discussion.
Workshops.
A workshop. But I guess we we probably had to post it. Who knows? I don't know.
Yes, we have to post it.
If we're all in the same room together.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
So there has been some in the past, but I think, again, given the last year with staff transitions and other things, we didn't do that. So just talking off the top of my head, there'd be a couple of different ways to get at that. We could probably try to devote a substantial portion of the September agenda, at least even an hour or more, maybe. We could try to minimize other kinds of actions. Maybe not, you know, we all read everybody's committee report, so unless there's an action item that really has to be voted on, we assume we've read it. We don't talk about it. So, I mean, there'd be ways to create a September agenda that maybe would address your item 2 to some degree. We could plan a second meeting or a different kind of meeting. That would be possible as well. And then I think you referenced your item 3. We probably need a specific resolution there, or maybe it's implicit in our charter and we just need to have staff and our council liaisons be reminded. I'm not sure. Those are my first 2 comments. So, other commissioners, what do you have to say? Commissioner Gothier is reaching for the microphone.
Well, I agree that devoting a large portion of the September meeting would be useful to this, but it does sound like a workshop might also be a good idea because I think it's going to take more than an hour. And I think that starting with looking at the next steps is a really excellent idea. There's a lot of good stuff in that master plan. It inspired me when I read it. It's one of the reasons I wanted to join the Sustainability Commission. So I'm all in favor of taking that work and seeing it implemented.
You could also consider, maybe on a smaller scale, like you were talking about, to have a meeting on a very specific topic that you just want to review, maybe a little bit quicker as a group. That would be maybe a study session you would have, and you designate 1 hour for this topic prior to your meeting or immediately following your agendized meeting. That may be a baby step option in between a big workshop.
Okay. Okay. So we could have so you're saying instead of our normal 2-hour meeting, start at 4 maybe? Right. To try to capture more time and declare part of that as a study session? Right. Yep. That hadn't thought of that. That's an option too, and don't know how commissioners' life schedules would fit into that, but because we do need to, we'll be back at City Hall in September, right?
Correct.
So 7 o'clock is really our close time.
Yes.
At City Hall.
The other thing to remember too is with the study session, you won't be taking motions and actions, so it'll be a little, your attendance can wax and wane a little bit without any issues or concerns.
Okay.
Would we be using the same room as that we have the commission meeting in? Because the Parks Commission meets until 4 o'clock in that room, and if they ran long, that would affect our start time.
That would have to be coordinated. But yeah, there are other meetings in different areas, so it really would depend on probably the amount of commissioners that you have committed to this, and then staff would then try to find the appropriate space for this.
But I think it's an excellent idea in terms of doing sort of 1 hour study sessions before, because I know it's difficult for everybody to identify a whole day that they can.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm thinking too. It might be hard to find a Saturday morning or Sunday morning or whatever. Yeah. Right. Okay. Other commissioners. Commissioner Goins, what are you thinking of the various options? Do you have a thought off the top of your head, or I mean, we don't have to settle on it exactly, but we could partner with you, Vice Chair Wilson and I and Jay and Stacy, and try to come up with a September scenario that seems to work. What do you have a comment at the moment?
I mean, I guess my thought would be, if you have 7 hours, you'll use 7 hours, but if you have 3 hours, you'll use 3 hours. So, not that we need to create a full-blown, step-by-step, day-by-day plan, but just, develop some high-level goals. So, adding an extra hour might be sufficient to do kind of the study session idea.
Okay. Commissioner Clark?
But I agree with your suggestion. We probably should do something between now and September, have a small group in addition to our subcommittee to make a plan for how we're going to do that, what the agenda will be, and what our goals will be.
Well, I mean, and I, again, I'm just doing this sort of off the top of my head. Would it make sense for Vice Chair Wilson and I to sort of partner with the ad hoc budget committee to devise the plan for the September agenda in consultation with staff? And we've got 6-7 weeks to figure out. Just because we're not having a meeting in August and council's not meeting doesn't mean that subcommittees and ad hoc groups can't continue to do their work. Are you on vacation, Jay?
No,
in August? Okay, didn't think so.
I'm discussing with Dan, and would it be ad hoc or would it be?
It's ad hoc, yeah, the budget committee is ad hoc.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And so really, and it would really just be consultation to devise the agenda is what we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
Yeah.
that works fine. And
Okay.
it saves time, so.
Why don't we do that? And so I guess the two thoughts we could say is at this point, if commissioners could look at their schedules for Tuesday, September 19th, and try to clear 4 o'clock on, just if you can do that 2 months out. That may not be exactly what happens, but try to clear that. And it would also make sense for everybody to pull out their paper copy or go online and look again at the Sustainability Master Plan. Read it as thoroughly as you want, but perhaps focus on your suggestion is the section of 30 next steps, which pulls from all of those chapters. Take a look at that and come sort of a little bit more with that in front of your mind. Would that be helpful?
Another thing I would add is that many of the commissioners have deep knowledge in specific areas, and one of the things that the master plan did not have really were sort of hurdle rates or metrics for outcomes in each of those areas. So what does a good bicycle plan actually do for you? Does it reduce accidents? Does it, those kinds of metrics and hurdle rates? So when you're reviewing your plan, if you want to be thinking about hurdle rates and metrics, that would be exceptionally useful, I think, for the planning meeting when we have it.
Okay. Other commissioners, Commissioner or Vice Chair Wilson?
I do have a question for staff. Does it present a problem for the chair, the vice chair, and the 3-member subcommittee?
Yes.
Given that that's a majority of.
That's a Brown Act violation of our seated staff right now. Gary and I were mouthing back and we're trying to count up. Yeah, 5 is our limit. 4 is our limit. 5 is over.
Yep, we have 9 commissioners
seated.
at the moment.
Correct.
So no more than 4.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well,
good catch.
we'll not have all 5 of us talk at any one point, and you or I will be silent at some point. How about that?
I'm good at
And we will need to agendize and post.
Yeah. We'll figure out a way between Commissioners Goins, Clark, and Wangler, and the 2 of us that we'll make sure that one of us isn't around for whatever planning purposes we need to do. Thank you for that reminder. I hadn't been connecting that math project in my head. Commissioner Goins, is there something you want us to do with item number 3 tonight? Are we prepared to do something with item number 3? I mean,
So as an individual, it's something that I think is really, really useful for us to consider. Our technical advisory role, this is what we do. We're advisory to the council. And so in a way, it feels very important that we provide input, not that it necessarily will, shift direction, but that's what we're here to do. So, to provide input on projects that have sustainability impacts but require discretionary approvals for purchasing assistance. Those all seem like very reasonable things for us to be engaged in. The question, I guess, becomes process. What's the trigger for staff to send us a report, or what's the trigger for us to be notified? What does that look like? When do we get project information? You know, it could be a resolution where we say to council, we want to do this, and they say, yes, you shall do this, or it could just be an internal staff process, or, you know, but that's kind of what I wanted to discuss.
Right. Well, here's what I'm wondering, because we're a small town, and we're all friendly, and we all see each other all the time anyway, so what if, could we task you to have a conversation with Jay about the staff process, and then would it also be appropriate to, for Commissioner Goins to at some point over the next 2 months, just raise this issue with Councilmember Coors, who is our council liaison, just to float this topic with him. I mean, there's no point in us sort of, being heavy-handed about it. It may just simply be a reminder. Could those things happen in a reasonable fashion?
This is all very interesting to me. I'm actually curious as to, I think this is related to the Sustainability Master Plan. What I don't know is the level at which Sustainability Master Plan was adopted. Is it something that in the city processes should be considered as the city continues to operate? Should we maybe as this commission pull out items that become part of city policy as items are considered, reviewed? Do we say, have we complied with the Sustainability Master Plan in this regard? So just a question as to where in the city structure between ordinance, policies, administrative procedures might the Sustainability Master Plan lie currently?
Well, other commissioners who were seated when that was in process, my memory is, I mean, we certainly did this in consultation with council members, with staff, and keeping council informed. I think that technically what they did was the receive and file. Is that,
my recollection is that there's a formal, this was our study session in June 2016. My recollection is that there was a formal resolution of the council of adopting the sustainability plan. Okay. Just, there are other plans that are general plans, so that it is official city policy.
And that would have been the same?
Yes, June 23rd. My recollection is June 23rd, 2016. It was our June meeting then. It was the joint meeting.
It's the same one where they assigned us the leaf blower.
Yep.
And I can definitely look into that further and meet with Commissioner Goins to lay out the plan from there moving forward.
Okay. I think, yes, we can certainly go back and find that. And maybe it was a joint, was it a joint? I've forgotten now the exact, there were very specific words that we used for that meeting. Anyway.
Yeah, it was a joint session, although I believe that part we kind of presented, and I think that it was a study session for the joint meeting. There was sort of a discussion, but then council, we left the dais, council stayed because it was then remained an official meeting of council, and as part of their official meeting agenda, it was adopted as a resolution.
Right. So, but I think probably where you're going is where the rubber really hits the road. Until somebody, staff or this commission or council, lifts something out of it and comes up with a process and a plan for making something happen. It's sitting on the shelf until somebody does that, whether or not it's adopted or not. Yep. So, but let's do that research.
Well, and I think that's going to come out of after your study session and possibly after, if there is a joint commission meeting at some point where it's discussed at that higher level, so to speak.
Okay. You willing to chat with Jay a bit and see how we might go forward on item 3?
Sure.
Okay, all right. Okay, do you think we've done what we need to do here? Other commissioners, questions on item G5?
Yeah, I can probably, if you give me just a second, I have the agenda for that. I want to take time because I have to look at the document.
Okay,
I have it on my system.
Okay, all right.
I'll follow up with Jay right after the meeting.
We'll circle back to you at the end. All right, we're at item 6, the Ad Hoc Committee on Bicycle Route Maps. I know that's moving forward. Commissioner Goins, Wangler, whoever.
Well, it's temporarily stalled.
Oh.
So we don't have much to report. We're working with city staff and with the graphic designer to resolve a couple of issues and move it forward. So we should have a lot more information at the next meeting. Hopefully it'll be done by then.
Okay. Questions? Anything on wellness or outreach? Commissioner Futterman.
As the health and wellness liaison, I was approached by the Cielo Vista Charter School to write a letter of support. They wrote a grant proposal for a shade structure that would fit a whole classroom under it, for PE, as well as to provide shade for the kids at recess, and also 2 reusable watering system stations. And so I have an interest in that, as you know, so that was exciting to me to just be able to talk to that and, to reduce also the single-use water bottles, as well as inspiring kids and adults to drink more water as opposed to other drinks and stay hydrated and stay out of the heat and sun. So hopefully that will help them get that grant. And, I'm hoping that that may serve as a model also for other schools to follow suit. And as far as outreach, I have not had a chance to work more on the, the class workshops that we had spoken about possibly doing in October. I was hoping to present that before you in September, but if we're going to be doing this special session, I'm wondering if it's possible to email you in August, if I can possibly get some ideas together. Is there a way to vote by email if we're not going to be, or could it be addressed in September? I'm not really sure how that works.
It seems to me that really that kind of thing could wrap really nicely into that broader discussion in September.
Okay,
because
perfect.
If we're talking about our priorities and how to make those priorities live, then that just seems, having reaching out to the public on some of those seems to make sense to me. So okay. I think if you could prepare a written report, then we could have that as a part of our discussion in September. So if you could send it to Dan in by September 1, then we'd be sure and have it in our packet.
Okay, I will do that. And then the other thing with outreach, I was approached by a young high school student who was interested in coming on board as our student liaison. We had last year, Lyndon Conrad had showed up. I'm not sure if there was a process to having her become our student liaison. She never came again to our meeting. So we have a volunteer, and she's interested.
Okay. Could you forward contact information about this student, and maybe some information if you could send it to Dan and to Jay and to myself? I mean, I think we thought that having a connection to the environmental studies folks, is this person a Palm Springs High?
Yes.
Or another school? Yeah. I think we thought having a connection through the schools made sense. Some other commissions have student members. Lyndon was not in order, well, I don't know how the other commissions do it. You're supposed to be a voter, so that makes you 18. If you're 18, you're probably graduated, but Human Rights or one of the other commissions has an official student.
Let us research that.
Yeah, so I don't know, but anyway, let's see what we can do. If you can send that information.
Just her contact info so she can be in touch with you.
If you've got her contact information, we could ask her for some information about how she might want to be connected.
And I'm not, yes, you can for sure. I'm not even sure if she knows exactly, but I mean, you can.
Sure.
You know,
sure.
But she is inspired.
Okay.
So.
Anything else, Commissioner Fudman?
No, that's all.
Okay. All right, and we're back to you, Commissioner Friedman, for water.
Okay. Good news from DWA this morning. They issued a resolution commending the city for its water conservation efforts, which Mayor Moon and Assistant City Manager Marcus Fuller accepted in person. During the restrictions period from June 2015 to April 2017, the city saved 28.5% from the 2013 baseline, or more than 234 million gallons, which is enough to fill 469,000 fire trucks or 2.9 million bathtubs. City was a significant part in DWA, achieving a cumulative 24% reduction during the restrictions period, which is above the statewide average for conservation. DWA also recognized the city this morning for a project completed at the Tuckwitz Creek Golf Course, which converted about 50,000 square feet in turf to desert landscaping in non-play areas and the entryway, and that gives great visibility to more sustainable native landscape. City continues to demonstrate interest in partnering with DWA to protect water resources now and for the future. So the mayor was quite happy, and with Marcus got a special shout out, and so a good collaboration between the city and DWA. As part of that collaboration, DWA is continuing its pipeline replacement program, but is coordinating with the city to avoid any conflicts with upcoming fall events in the downtown area, so that there aren't streets that get pulled up at the wrong time or aren't coordinated with the city's own road renovation programs. June consumption, given the weather, was a little bit less than usual, 18% from the 2013 baseline, but cumulative savings in the service area, 21% since June 2016, when the target of a 10 to 13% reduction was announced. So conservation continues. And finally, DWA is holding a special study session this coming Monday morning at 8 to discuss its possible participation in the California Water Fix, which is the large tunnels proposed for the Sacramento River Delta.
Questions of Commissioner Friedman? Thanks for keeping your finger on what's going on with DWA. We appreciate it. All right, we're at Commissioner comments. I think every commissioner has had something to say tonight. Are there other comments? I'll just note, which Stacy had called our attention to, we do have 2 vacancies on the commission. So over these next couple of months, if you, as you are about the city, find people that you think would bring an expertise that we could use, please encourage them to go to the city website, to the city clerk's tab, and find that application. There wouldn't be action by September because of what's going on with council, but you could certainly drum up some interest. So give that some thought. And having lost Laurie Kibbe, gender diversity would also be a nice thing. So give some thought to that as well. Anybody else? Staff comments, a new item. Somebody threw staff comments in. Staff?
Somebody?
Do you have comments?
I just wanted to say thank you, and at this point, obviously Jay is now going to lead you, guide you, and do well by you, I'm sure. You don't have to copy me on any further emails, but you know how to get a hold of me if you need anything. So thank you for letting me assist.
Okay. Well, thank you. I wasn't sure where we were in that process, but
We're there.
our thanks to you for your consultation and work with us this year. We appreciate it, Stacey. And it was a good fit, given your experience as a commissioner. You knew what we were about and had a history, and so we thank you.
It's been my pleasure, guys.
Any other staff want to say anything?
No comments from me.
Okay, all right. I think we are adjourning to our meeting on Tuesday, September 19th. The official start is 5 p.m., but stay tuned for a possible study session that would begin as early as 4 in a location to be announced. So, is there a motion for adjournment? So moved from Commissioner Gothier. Second? Second from Commissioner McCann. All in favor say yes?
Yes.
We are adjourned. Thank you. And on time to boot.